I've always believed that life is a tapestry, woven with threads of choice and chance, each moment a stitch that holds the fabric together. For years, I thought my tapestry with Clara was flawless, a vibrant, intricate design of love, trust, and shared dreams. We'd been married for 12 years, built a home in the quiet suburbs of Maplewood, and filled it with laughter, late-night conversations, and the patter of our daughter Lily's feet. Clara was my anchor, my muse, my everything. Her hazel eyes, framed by those soft curls, still made my heart skip when she smiled at me across the breakfast table. But tapestries, I've learned, can hide frayed edges, and a single loose thread can unravel it all. It started with small things so subtle I barely noticed at first. Clara's phone, once left carelessly on the counter, was now always in her hand or tucked into her pocket. She'd tilt the screen away when I passed by, her fingers pausing mid-text as if guarding a secret. She'd laugh it off, saying it was just work or a group chat with her book club, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Then there were the late nights at the office. Clara, a graphic designer, had always been passionate about her work, but suddenly her projects demanded extra hours, meetings that stretched past dinner. She'd come home smelling faintly of lavender and cedarwood, not her usual jasmine perfume, and I'd tell myself it was just the scent of a new candle in her studio. I wasn't suspicious, not really. Doubt felt like a betrayal of her, of us. Instead, I leaned into my role as the steady husband. I cooked dinners for Lily and me, helped with homework, and left notes for Clara on the fridge. * miss you, love. Heat up the lasagna when you get home. * I'd lie awake, listening for the hum of her car in the driveway, and when she'd slip into bed, her back to me, I'd convince myself she was just tired. But the distance grew, a quiet chasm widening between us. Her kisses became perfunctory, her touches fleeting. When I'd reach for her in the dark, she'd murmur about early mornings or headaches, and I'd retreat, swallowing the ache in my chest. One Thursday in October, the first chill of autumn creeping through our windows, I decided to surprise her. Clara had mentioned a big deadline, so I thought I'd bring her favorite pumpkin spice latte and a croissant from the cafe she loved. Lily was at a sleepover, and I had the evening free from my accounting job. I drove to her office, a sleek glass building downtown, my heart light with the thought of seeing her face brighten. But when I pulled into the parking lot, her car wasn't there. The lot was nearly empty, the building dark except for a few security lights. Puzzled, I called her. The phone rang, then went to voicemail. *K, it's Clara. Leave a message. Her voice, warm and familiar, twisted something in my gut. I texted instead. *K, brought you a coffee. Where are you? No reply. I sat in my car, the latte cooling in the cup holder, and tried to reason it out. Maybe she'd gone to a client's office, or a last-minute meeting at a coffee shop. But why hadn't she mentioned it? I drove home, the unease settling deeper, and checked her calendar on our shared app. Nothing. Just a blank slot labeled "Work Late." I poured the coffee down the sink, the croissant untouched, and told myself I was overthinking. The next day, Clara was her usual self, cheerful, bustling around the kitchen, packing Lily's lunch. I watched her, searching for clues, but she seemed normal, maybe too normal. "How was the deadline last night?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She froze for a fraction of a second, her knife pausing mid-spread of peanut butter. "Oh, exhausting," she said, flashing a smile. "But we got it done. Sorry I was so late." She kissed my cheek and hurried out, leaving me with the scent of jasmine and a nagging doubt. Weeks passed, and the pattern continued. Late nights, evasive answers, a new guardedness in her demeanor. I started noticing other things. A receipt for a dinner for two at a restaurant we'd never been to, tucked into her purse. A new necklace, a delicate silver chain with a small emerald pendant that she claimed was a gift from a client. I wanted to confront her, but fear held me back. What if I was wrong? What if I shattered our trust over nothing? Instead, I became a detective in my own life, hating myself for it but unable to stop. One night, after Clara claimed another late meeting, I couldn't sit still. Lily was asleep, and the house felt too quiet, too heavy with unspoken questions. I grabbed my keys and drove to her office again, my pulse hammering. The lot was empty as before. I parked across the street, my car hidden in the shadows, and waited. An hour passed, then two. No Clara. I was about to leave when my phone buzzed. A text from her. Asterisk heading home soon. Love. Don't wait up. Asterisk the word love felt like a mockery. I drove aimlessly, my mind spiraling, until I found myself near the park where we used to picnic. On impulse, I pulled over and walked the paths we'd once strolled hand in hand. That's when I saw her car, parked near the gazebo. My heart stopped. I approached slowly, my shoes silent on the grass, and peered through the trees. There, under the soft glow of a street lamp, was Clara. She wasn't alone. He was tall, lean, with dark hair and a confident stance I didn't recognize. They stood close, too close, her hand on his arm, his head tilted toward her as they laughed. The sound of her laughter, so rare at home now, cut through me. Then he cupped her face, and she leaned in, a slow, lingering motion that shattered something fundamental inside me. I wanted to run, to charge at them, to demand answers, but my feet wouldn't move. I watched, a ghost in my own life, as they kissed. A kiss that wasn't mine. A kiss that belonged to stolen moments I'd never known. I don't know how I got home. The drive was a blur, my vision swimming with rage and grief. When Clara slipped into bed that night, I lay still, my back to her, my mind replaying the scene. The next morning, I called in sick and sat at my desk, staring at nothing. I needed proof, something undeniable, to confront her and hold myself together. I logged into our phone account, my fingers trembling as I pulled up her call logs. There it was, a number she texted and called dozens of times, often late at night. I cross-checked it online and found a name, Ethan Caldwell, a photographer who'd worked on one of her campaigns. I didn't stop there. I accessed her email, a password I'd known from years of shared accounts, and found a thread buried in a folder labeled Miscellaneous. Messages that confirmed everything. Plans to meet, coded language about coffee and work, a photo of them at a hotel bar, her smile radiant in a way I hadn't seen in months. One email, sent just days ago, read, asterisk, I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was incredible. See, hugs and kisses. Asterisk, I felt my stomach lurch, but I kept digging, a masochist unearthing his own ruin. I found a reservation for a weekend at a bed and breakfast in the mountains, booked for 2 weeks from now, under Ethan's name but paid with Clara's card. The pieces fell into place, a cruel puzzle I'd been too trusting to see. She wasn't just drifting. She was living another life, one where I was irrelevant, a placeholder in a home she'd outgrown. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional, a theft of the intimacy I'd thought was ours alone. I sat there, the screen glowing, my world in ashes. I could have confronted her then, screamed, thrown her out. But rage, I realized, was too simple. It wouldn't undo the lies, wouldn't erase the image of her with her. I wanted justice, not chaos. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, to understand the depth of the wound she'd carved into our life. I closed the laptop, my hands steady now, and began to plan. I started small, methodical. I screenshot every email, every text, and backed them up on a hidden drive. I called the bed and breakfast, posing as Ethan, and canceled the reservation, ensuring no trace remained. I tracked Ethan's life, his studio, his schedule, his habits. He was a freelancer, nomadic, with a reputation for charm and a string of short-term gigs. I found his social media, where he posted artsy photos of cityscapes and, occasionally, Clara, her face just out of frame but recognizable to me in the curve of her jaw, the tilt of her head. I didn't tell Clara I knew. I played the oblivious husband, cooking dinners, kissing her goodbye, all while my plan took shape. I contacted a private investigator, a discreet woman named Marla, who specialized in domestic cases. I gave her everything, names, emails, dates, and asked for more evidence, something public, something undeniable that could ruin Clara as much as she'd ruined me. Marla nodded. her eyes sharp, and said, "This won't take long." As I left the house each day, I smiled at Clara, the weight of my secret a strange comfort. She thought she was clueless, but I was the truth now, the reckoning. I didn't know yet how far I'd go, but I knew one thing. When I struck, it would feel the betrayal as deeply as I did. The tapestry was unraveling, and I'd be the one to cut the final threads. The days following my discovery were a strange dance of pretense and precision. I woke each morning with a hollow ache in my chest, but I buried it beneath a mask of normalcy. Clara, oblivious to the storm brewing, continued her routine, kissing Lily's forehead before school, humming as she poured coffee, texting under the table with that faint smile I now recognized as deceit. Every glance, every casual touch, felt like a blade twisting deeper, but I held my tongue. Confrontation would come, but not yet. I needed more than accusations. I needed evidence that would leave her nowhere to hide. And I needed a plan that would make her feel the betrayal as acutely as I did. Marla, the private investigator, was my lifeline in those weeks. She worked with a quiet efficiency that both unnerved and reassured me. Her first report arrived 5 days after our meeting, delivered in a plain manila envelope slipped under my office door. Inside were photos, timestamps, and detailed notes. Clara and Ethan at a wine bar, their hands intertwined across a candlelit table. Clara slipping into Ethan's studio late at night, the blinds drawn but their silhouettes visible through a gap. A receipt from a boutique hotel, signed by Clara, for a room booked under a pseudonym. Each image, each fact was a brick in the wall I was building. A wall that would trap her in her own lies. Marla's notes also revealed Ethan's character. He was 34, for years younger than Clara, with a reputation for fleeting romances and a knack for charming clients. His photography business was modestly successful, but he lived beyond his means. Fancy dinners, designer clothes, a leased sports car he could barely afford. Clara, it seemed, was funding parts of his lifestyle. The bed and breakfast reservation I'd canceled was just one of many expenses she'd covered. Dinners, concert tickets, even a new lens for his camera, all paid with our joint account. The audacity of it burned. My money, our money, fueling her betrayal. I didn't stop at Marla's reports. I became obsessive, cross-referencing her findings with my own digging. I hacked into Clara's secondary email, one she thought I didn't know about, and found more messages. They weren't just plans for secret meetings. They were confessions of feelings, dreams of a future unburdened by me. One email from Ethan read, "Asterisk, you deserve more than a life of routine. We could travel, create, be free. You don't need to stay trapped." Asterisk trapped. The word seared into me. Was that how she saw our life? Our home, our daughter, our years together. A cage? I printed that email and kept it in my desk, a talisman of my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for Lily, for the life we'd built, for the truth Clara had trampled. But I knew a simple confrontation wouldn't suffice. She'd cry, apologize, maybe even beg, and I'd be left with nothing but hollow promises. No, I wanted her to face consequences that matched the depth of her deception. I wanted Ethan to suffer too, to lose the charm and confidence he wielded so carelessly. And I wanted it to be public, undeniable, a spectacle that would strip them of their secrets. The plan began to take shape one evening as I sat in my study, the house quiet except for Lily's soft snores upstairs. Clara was working late again, and I was sipping whiskey, staring at Marla's latest photos. One showed Clara and Ethan at an art gallery opening. Her arm looped through his, both of them laughing with a crowd of local artists. The gallery, I learned, was hosting a showcase for Ethan's work in 2 weeks. A big event, his chance to network with collectors and critics. Clara had helped organize it, using her design skills to create the invitations and promotional materials. The event was her project as much as his, a stage for their shared ambition. That's when the idea hit me. What if I could turn their moment of triumph into one of ruin? Not just a private reckoning, but a public one, where their lies would be exposed to the very people they sought to impress. The thought was intoxicating, a dark thrill that steadied my shaking hands. I poured another whiskey and started sketching out the details, my mind racing with possibilities. First, I needed more evidence, something irrefutable that could be presented without explanation. Marla was already on it. She'd installed a discreet audio recorder in Ethan's studio. With his landlord's permission, a favor Marla called in from a past case. The recordings were gold. Conversations between Clara and Ethan, unguarded and intimate, discussing their plans, their feelings, even their guilt. One clip, time-stamped 3 days ago, had Clara saying, "I love him, Ethan, but it's not the same. It's duty, not passion. With you, I feel alive." I played it again and again, each word a fresh wound, but it fueled my determination. Next, I needed a way to deliver the evidence. The gallery opening was the perfect venue. Hundreds of guests, influential names, all gathered to celebrate Ethan's art and, by extension, Clara's vision. I contacted the gallery owner, posing as a potential buyer interested in sponsoring the event. I offered a small donation, enough to gain access to their planning details and a spot on the guest list. The owner, a chatty woman named Elise, was thrilled, unaware of the role she'd play in my revenge. I spent hours crafting the reveal. I compiled Marla's photos, the emails, and the audio clips into a digital file, edited into a 5-minute presentation. It started innocently, an intro to Ethan's photography, a slideshow of his landscapes, before shifting to candid shots of him and Clara, their stolen moments, their lies laid bare. The audio would play over the images, their voices confessing their betrayal. I synced it to a USB drive, tested it on a projector, and felt a grim satisfaction watching it unfold. It was devastating, professional, and, most importantly, undeniable. But I didn't stop there. I wanted to hit Ethan where it hurt most. His career. I reached out anonymously to his clients, using a burner phone and a fake email, planting seeds of doubt. "Check his invoices," I wrote to one. "He's been double billing." To another, "His photos were stock images. Do your research." I knew these wouldn't entirely true, but I'd seen enough discrepancies in his finances to make them plausible. I wanted him scrambling, his reputation fraying before the gala even started. For Clara, the blow would be social and professional too. She thrived on her reputation as a creative, dependable, a pillar of the Maplewood arts scene. I drafted an anonymous tip to her boss, a PDF compiling evidence of her misuse of company resources for Ethan's projects. Logos designed on company time, late nights billed as work but spent with him. I didn't send it yet. I'd wait until after the gala, when she'd already reeling. The hardest part was Lily. I couldn't let her see the fallout, not yet. I arranged for her to spend the weekend at my parents' place, an hour away, under the guise of a family visit. I told Clara it was a surprise for Lily's birthday, and she agreed, distracted as always by her own concerns. I hated using Lily as a pawn in their strategy, but I had to protect her from the chaos of her mother's choices. As the day of the gala approached, I kept up the facade at home. I complimented Clara's dress, a shimmering navy gown she'd bought for the event, and asked about her project. She glowed with excitement, oblivious to my knowledge, talking about Ethan's talent and the crowd they expected. I nodded, smiling, my heart a furnace of cold fury. Every word she said about him was a nail in the coffin of our marriage, but I let her dig deeper, knowing her fall was near. The night before the gala, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my car outside Ethan's studio, watching the lights flicker off at midnight. Marla had texted earlier, *, got one last piece. Video. Sending tomorrow. *, I didn't know what it was, but I trusted her to deliver. I drove home, the USB drive in my pocket, and slipped into bed beside Clara. She stirred, mumbling something, and I stared at her silhouette, wondering how I'd ever loved someone so capable of deceit. By morning, Marla's final piece arrived. A video from a hotel security camera, grainy but clear. Clara and Ethan in the lobby, laughing, her hand on his chest as they headed to the elevator. It was dated the night she told me she was at a client dinner. I added it to the presentation, the final nail. I tested the file one last time, burned a backup, and hid both drives in my safe. Then I showered, shaved, and put on my best suit, preparing for the role of the supportive husband one last time. As I drove to the gala, Clara, that evening, I felt a strange calm. She was in her element, chatting about the guest list, unaware of the night's true purpose. I glanced at her, her hazel eyes catching the streetlights, and felt a pang. Not of love, but of loss, for the woman I'd thought she was. The gallery was alive with music and chatter when we arrived, Ethan already holding court near his framed prints. I shook his hand, my grip firm, my smile tight, and he thanked me for coming. "Clara's told me so much about you," he said, his voice smooth. "She's amazing, isn't she?" "Amazing," I echoed, my eyes locking on his. She was, and she was about to learn the cost of her choices. The storm was here, and I was its architect, ready to unleash it. The gallery was a sea of elegance, all chandeliers and polished wood, the air thick with the murmur of voices and the clink of wine glasses. Clara moved through the crowd like a star, her navy gown catching the light as she greeted colleagues and clients. Her laughter a melody that once warmed my heart, but now grated like a discordant note. Ethan stood by his photographs, shaking hands, his charm effortless, his dark eyes scanning the room with the confidence of a man who believed he'd won. I stood apart, a shadow in my tailored suit, the USB drive in my pocket a ticking bomb. Tonight, their carefully curated world would collapse, and I would be the one to pull the pin. The plan was simple in its cruelty, designed to expose them in the most public way possible. The gallery's projector, used for showcasing Ethan's work, was my weapon. I'd spent days ensuring the presentation was flawless. A seamless blend of his art and their betrayal, timed to play during his speech, when every eye would be on him. Marla had come through with the final piece. A video, crystal clear despite its grainy origins, showing Clara and Ethan in a hotel lobby, their intimacy undeniable. Combined with the emails, photos, and audio clips, it was a narrative of deceit that would leave no room for excuses. I mingled, playing the role of the supportive husband, nodding at Clara's introductions, shaking hands with strangers. "This is my husband, David," she'd say, her hand on my arm, her smile radiant. I returned it, my expression practiced, my pulse steady. Ethan approached once, offering a glass of champagne and a grin. "Glad you could make it, man," he said, clapping my shoulder. I wanted to crush the glass in my hand, but I just smiled, murmuring thanks, my eyes never leaving his. He didn't know it yet, but he was walking into a trap I'd spent weeks crafting. The gallery owner, Elise, announced the start of Ethan's presentation, and the crowd gathered near a large screen at the front. Clara stood beside him, her pride evident as she adjusted a microphone, her design work visible in the sleek program on every seat. I slipped to the back, near the tech booth, where I'd bribed a young AV tech earlier that day, $100 to accidentally load my USB instead of Ethan's. The kid, barely out of college, had shrugged, no questions asked. I handed him the drive, my heart pounding but my hands steady, and retreated to the shadows. Ethan took the stage, his voice smooth as he thanked the crowd, his arm brushing Clara's as she stood nearby. He spoke of his art, his passion for capturing fleeting moments, and the crowd nodded, captivated. I watched Clara's face, her eyes shining with admiration, and felt a surge of cold fury. The screen flickered to life behind him, showing his landscapes. Moody cityscapes, misty forests, all the work he'd poured himself into. The crowd murmured approval. Then, as planned, the slide changed. A photo of Clara and Ethan appeared, their hands clasped in a dimly lit bar. The crowd stirred, confused whispers rising. Ethan faltered, his voice catching, but the presentation rolled on. Another image, them laughing in his studio, her arms around his neck. Then the audio kicked in, Clara's voice, soft and damning. Asterisk, "I love him, but it's duty, not passion. With you, I feel alive." Asterisk, the room went silent, a collective intake of breath. Clara's face drained of color, her eyes wide as she stared at the screen. Ethan froze, his mouth open, no words coming. The video played next. The hotel lobby. Clara's hand on Ethan's chest, their laughter echoing as they headed for the elevator. Emails flashed across the screen, snippets of their plans, their stolen moments, her words about wanting to be free. The crowd was a mix of shock and discomfort, some turning away, others staring at Clara and Ethan like they were a car wreck. Elise, the gallery owner, rushed toward the tech booth, but the AV kid was gone, as I'd instructed. The presentation ended with a final image. Clara's emerald necklace, a gift from Ethan, glinting on her neck in a photo she'd sent him. The screen went black. For a moment, the silence was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to open gossip. Clara stood rooted to the spot, her hands trembling, her eyes darting to me. I met her gaze, my expression blank, and saw the realization hit her. Her secret, her betrayal, laid bare for all to see. Ethan tried to salvage it, stammering about a misunderstanding. But the crowd was already turning, their respect for him crumbling. Clients he'd hoped to impress slipped out, shaking their heads. Elise, furious, demanded answers, but Ethan had none. Clara moved toward me, her face a mask of panic. "David," she whispered, her voice breaking. "How could you?" I cut her off with a look, cold and unyielding. "Don't," I said, my voice low. "You did this." She reached for my arm, but I stepped back, leaving her alone in the wreckage of her choices. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I walked out, the night air cool against my skin, and drove home. The house was empty, Lily safe with my parents, and I poured a whiskey, the weight of what I'd done settling over me. It wasn't enough, though. The gala was only the first strike. I wanted Clara to lose more than her dignity, and Ethan to lose his livelihood. I'd already set the next phase in motion. The next morning, I sent the anonymous tip to Clara's boss, the PDF detailing her misuse of company resources. By noon, Marla confirmed that Clara had been called into a meeting, her job on the line. I'd also leaked the presentation file to a local arts blog, framing it as a scandal in the Maplewood scene. The post went viral within hours, shared across social media, Ethan's name and Clara's linked in a storm of speculation. His clients began pulling contracts, his reputation in tatters. Clara's design firm, wary of the publicity, suspended her pending an investigation. But I wasn't done. I wanted Ethan to feel the personal cost, not just the professional one. I'd learned he was close to his sister, a single mother who relied on him for support. Using a burner account, I sent her a curated version of the evidence, enough to show his character without implicating Clara directly. I didn't want her pity. I wanted her disgust. Marla reported a week later that Ethan's sister had cut contact, refusing his calls. His world was shrinking, just as mine had when I'd seen them together in the park. Clara came home that night, her eyes red, her voice hoarse. She tried to explain, to apologize, but I stopped her. "Pack your things," I said, my tone flat. "You can stay in the guest room until we figure out what's next for Lily." She cried, begged, said she'd end it with Ethan, that she loved me. But her words were hollow, drowned out by the memory of her laughter with him, her emails about being trapped. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. My silence was punishment enough. Over the next weeks, I dismantled their lives with surgical precision. I filed for divorce, using Marla's evidence to ensure Clara had no leverage. I kept Lily shielded, telling her only that Mommy and Daddy needed time apart. Clara moved out, renting a small apartment, her career in limbo. Ethan's gallery show was canceled. His studio lease terminated when clients stopped paying. I heard he'd left town, chasing gigs in another city, but the damage followed him online. I didn't feel triumph, not exactly. The house was too quiet without Lily's laughter filling every corner, and I missed the Clara I'd thought I knew. But I'd reclaimed something, my dignity, my truth. The tapestry of our life was gone, but I was weaving a new one, thread by thread, for Lily and me. Clara and Ethan had built their betrayal on lies. I'd built my revenge on truth, and it was colder, sharper, more enduring than their fleeting passion. As I sat in my study, the divorce papers signed, the whiskey bottle nearly empty, I realized the cost of my vengeance. I'd won, but the victory was heavy, a weight I'd carry alongside the betrayal. I looked at a photo of Lily on my desk, her smile bright, and promised myself I'd protect her from the fallout. The storm had passed, but the wreckage remained, and I'd walk through it, one step at a time, into a future I'd forge alone.